Hello mate, welcome back to the channel. So we've got a last minute video update before our league start, and this is something that I have been taking quite seriously despite the ridiculous meme. But yes, everyone's talking about Melee. I'm so excited for Melee, and I was thinking about league start, and I just can't help but scratch the itch of looking over my shoulder at RF. There's been some really nice buffs to RF, and so this video is going to be about looking at the options. Is it a good league start? We know it's a good league start, but for 325 it looks even better, and maybe using that, I might be doing that in order to fund my more experimental, bigger builds, which we will talk about later on in the video. So yes, it's Melee League, but okay, RF is looking absolutely incredible. Why would you go RF? So obviously we've got very smooth leveling. We don't need to worry about our gear slots. We don't need to worry about upgrading our weapons constantly. We don't have to worry about resistances because of the Chieftain. And so all we need to do is get a load of fire resistance and some chaos as we go. It is tried and tested. I have played RF before on Chieftain, and it is fantastic. I had an absolute blast doing it, and it was amazing league starter. It started to pull off a little bit towards the end. It started to slow down a little bit, but that being said, we can then transition. That's the point of this. This is what's making me seriously consider it, and I hope maybe you might consider it as well if you are an RF enjoyer, but also totally understand if you want to go Melee. So the explosions, that's the big thing with Chieftain. We're getting Hinakoras, and because of that, it is giving us an absolute ton of explosion damage. We get 500% of max life as fire, and you think, okay, well, it's only a 5% chance, but that 5% chance comes up a lot, and then if we combine that with ignites, it just feels really, really, really good. Yeah, it's great for very dense strats, and I know a lot of people are looking at things like Ritual, Blight, Harvest, Expedition. These are all really good strategies early on for your Atlas, and a lot of people, it covers almost half the game, but this is most of the stuff that people enjoy playing, even Delve. And the number of monsters, the density that you're getting, you're just triggering these explosions and clearing this content incredibly efficiently. I can 100% vouch for this. I went to 95 or 96 on an RF build 2 leagues back, and it was incredible. I did Expedition for that, but Blight is going to be great for that as well. And also with RF, the nice thing is you can use Jun early on, not only to get a load of experiences from the safe houses, but also to get a load of gear. You're going to want that for your unveil mods and your crafting. And then potentially if you do Expedition as well, which is the same side of the Atlas tree, then you can get Jun and Rog together, getting loads and loads of potential gear options that you can farm yourself instead of worrying about everyone else, and potentially some stuff to sell. But then also recombination is back, and we know that it seems to be based off of eye level, the cost of it. And so the idea being that earlier on, when you've got, say, level 60 bases and things like that, you're going to be able to recombinate a ton of stuff. So you might be able to recombinate a couple of ROG items or some Jun items together and get some pretty cool stuff. All right, so it's back and it is better. So Pox said it himself.
Now, for people who played the build last league, the build's actually, I'd say, a little bit stronger on the early, mid, and late game stages, but definitely weaker on the, let's call it, hyper late game. So if anyone got to the like adorned version of scaling,
that's fine, because again, we're using this to get to late T16 maps, maybe even some T17s, depending on how far we can push it. We're not looking for this to be our ultimate build for the league. We want it to get us a load of currency, and I'm someone that likes to play one league, sort of like one build per league for quite a while, and then I'll transition maybe and try some stuff. So I know I'm going to be able to push this quite far. What we'll do is we'll go into Pox's POB here, and you can see, like, if you want a full guide, go watch his videos on this. He's done a like level by level breakdown, but you can get it on his website. I'll put the link in the description below. And you've got a really, really easy to follow. You know, you've got trees from all the way from 1 to 20, 21 to 40, all the way up to end game. I mean, the interesting thing that's big and has changed from Pox's builds, just to give you the TLDR, is that he's now got glancing blows. He's going block and triggering life recovery on a lot of block, but I'll let his video sort of talk about it. It's very, very good. What I wanted to do was, since we basically had a load of changes to the tree, like I'm saying here, we've got versatile combatant, we've got warcries. I wanted to look at the tree and maybe look at doing it slightly differently. I have done an alternate tree that is maybe like a third less damage, but gives you an absolutely insane amount of tankiness. So this is like maybe if you're going hardcore, or you just want to try something different, or you just don't like dying and you just really want to, you know, make sure that you're nice and safe. I think this could end up being incredibly tanky. The sort of effective hit pool numbers you always have to be a little bit careful with, but this is Guardian Pinnacle Bust. This is, you know, set to this damage, and also we haven't got Immortal Call Up or anything here. And the way we're getting such a ridiculous amount of life, if I do put Immortal Call on, it basically goes to infinite life, like we're unkillable. Now, obviously, these calcs could be slightly inaccurate, but the point is, instead of on Poxes, we're going up and taking glancing blows and pathing this way. On ours, what we're doing is coming down on the outside, and then we are doing a couple of interesting things. So we're using the Red Nightmare to get a ton of block with fire tattoos, converting all the strength to fire. And then I'll ignore this bit here, but then we're coming all the way down to Versatile Combatant, and that's giving us our 65 block. And we're getting another Endurance charge, which is giving us another 4% damage reduction from Ellie and Physical, which is very, very powerful. Then, while we're down here, we also get Fortify, and we're getting our Warcry nodes here. So, the thing with getting Fortify, obviously, it's another fantastic layer of defense, which is why we're able to get these crazy high hit numbers, effective hit pool. But the reason we're actually getting it is for this mastery here, and that is 2% reduced duration of ailments inflicted on you per fortification. So this, combined with bubonic, where are they? The bubonic trail boots, basically gives us a full ailment immunity, and that's the way that we're getting that. And there's some other stuff going on there that I'll talk about in a bit. But coming back to our list here, we're getting, you know, over 3k life regen, which is huge. And that is without having like boots life regen on our boots and stuff. And that is because we are picking up these Warcry nodes, and we are getting an absolute ton of Warcry increased effect. And with Enduring Cry, we're getting 20% of our life regen per second. Now, we've managed to get all of the nodes. So we pick up the fire resistance negation node, and we're getting the Warcry buff effect and infinite power node for just nice and smooth. Now, the nice thing about doing Warcry, I've talked about this in my last video, but Warcries are really good, but when you're attacking as well, obviously it's a lot more sort of work to do, whereas when we're playing RF, we can just literally stand there, throw a fire trap, and then Warcry in between. We've got a lot less uptime, a lot less things to press, so that's making it a ton easier to do that, and it's going to be a smoother playstyle, being able to keep up our Warcries, because that was something I was a bit worried about with the slam builds. On top of that, what else have we got? So the only other really major changes, like everything else is pretty similar to Pox's build here. The big changes are beyond sort of having Fortify, having Warcries, is I'm going to include Cinder Swallow. Now, because we have our Bubonic Trail, and that gives us Death Walk. Now, Death Walk is a skill that triggers the consumption of corpses. And by consuming as many, whenever we're consuming corpses, we're gaining back charges for our Cinder Swallow. So we're going to have pretty much a permanent uptime on Cinder Swallow, which is going to be a 10% more damage multiplier, as well as some really nice. I've got the crit version on here, but you could get the, you know, a lot of life recovery and things, and some better mods. I just haven't updated it there. In order to get the Bubonic Trail bonuses, we're using Darkness Enthroned, and we're putting some nice jewels in there, but we have to have a magic, a unique, and a rare version of Abyss jewels to get all of the benefits. And it also gives us, you know, as a like benefit of that, we get some points back from mana reservation, because we're getting 20% mana reservation from these boots, which is absolutely huge. Now, I've corrupted these. I think these are going to be like not going to be incredibly popular. They might be, but you know, as you push through, if you really want, you can corrupt these and get another endurance charge for 7 endurance charges, and potentially more elsewhere. So yes, very, very, very powerful. So I mean, that's kind of like the difference really between our trees is like Pox's is actually, I think, going to be probably better. It's like 30%, 40% more damage. And I think it's going to be a little bit easier to gear right at the beginning. But if you were going hardcore, you wanted to try something different, then, you know, the thing is, Glancing Blows is amazing because it's triggering a lot at 75. But we're taking 65% of that damage, whereas we're getting 65 block and spell block and taking none of that damage. So I think that's where a big amount of the tankiness is coming from. But yeah, I think like the main thing for me is the question is around Penance Mark, and this is the thing that really is like the main thing that makes me want to play RF at the start of the league. So Penance Mark, we can get it from the new ring that's come into the game, and it's going to allow us to generate these like, you know, little phantasms and stuff. And at level 83, they should have about 20,000 life. Now, 500% of 20,000 is obviously going to be 100,000 base fire damage. And our calculations in the PoE are only going off about 83,000. So the potential for this is absolutely huge. Now, you can kind of see here with Travik's footage here that like the way that they're spawning. And if I just try and pause it for a second, you can see how far they're spawning out here. So there's like a minimum distance that they spawn from the boss. You can kind of see the difference there. Now, the nice thing about Hinakura's Fury is for an explosion, it has a lot larger area. Now, I don't have the exact area, but it does scale with AoE as well. And so the idea is that we can zerg down bosses by triggering every second we get 3 of them if we're shield charging, as long as we're hitting the boss, basically. And that is going to mean that, well, essentially we're going to be able to get like 15% per second chance to trigger an ignite. And our ignites, because of Cloak of Flames, are going to be lasting about 6.4 seconds. So we've got a very high uptime on our ignites, potentially like 90% uptime on our Hinakura's ignites, if we're triggering off of these. And they should overlap. I think the AoE is going to be able to do it. I mean, it even says in Hinakura's on the wiki, it even says, you know, it's a significantly larger radius than the explosions. So I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to trigger off these guys, which should rapidly increase our boss damage, which is the thing that could take this from like a really nice league starter to potentially a really powerful thing that will carry us through the middle of the league, and then we can jump into some crazy expensive and experimental stuff with like our Winds of Flame build idea, or, you know, like some interesting melee stuff. See how Warden shakes out, see how Tinctures shake out. There's a lot to figure out there. So the only other thing I want to draw attention to, if I come back to the tree, we'll go into Pox's tree actually, is this Fire Mastery. So critical hits do not inherently ignite, but we get 100% increased damage with hits against ignited enemies. Now, the nice thing is that I'm pretty sure this works, but I may be corrected. But secondary damage, which is what Hinakura's is, these explosions, are considered a hit. They do hit. Where does it say this? It says it here somewhere. Oh, it hits. Here we go, up on the top right. Now, that means that this node then will, as long as the enemy is ignited, which they will be because we're going to be shield charging, we have a really high chance to ignite, if not 100%. But the enemy is always going to be ignited, and so we're giving 100% increased damage to our Hinakura's explosions, and that could be a really, well, that is quite a nice damage buff. So I think for 1 point, this is really important. Pox hadn't included it in his. Maybe he knows something that I don't, but if this works, which I think it should, going off the wiki, I will test it when I league start this, if I league start this, then yeah, it looks like that's going to be a really powerful node. So just a little bit of extra info there. And then finally, like, this is kind of the reason, again, I just want to solidify the reason that I'm looking at RF, and why I think it could be, you know, fantastic, is I think there's going to be some really interesting enchants. I said this on the podcast with Try and Dreamcore, but you know, there's a ton of enchants. There's over 100 enchants coming into the game. We've seen a couple of really interesting ones like the Doomfletch thing, but the enchants could be like build defining and could come up with some really interesting builds. In Crucible League, we saw how there was builds that were created around these Crucible passives that came onto the weapons, on the weapon skill trees. And I think I've already got a really interesting idea with the Winds of Flame thing. That's going to take some currency, and it'd be nice not to struggle through that. But then the enchants that get revealed might open up entirely new ideas. And so what I'm thinking is I definitely want to play melee this league, but what type of melee I think is still yet to be discovered. And I do think like Ground Slam is looking really good. Like, you know, the Ignite versions, Bleed versions, just pure damage versions. You know, there's lots of like really good slam builds, as well as retaliation skills are looking incredibly busted. And I definitely want to try a retaliation build at some point as well. That being said, I just know this is going to be incredibly smooth, incredibly smooth. It's tried and tested. There's just so much about it that like is going to make League Start really, really like easy. And I think that's going to allow me to kind of then like discover the melee build as we go. So I don't know. I'm not trying to convince you to play RF. Like, if you want to play melee, play melee. But I just wanted to share like my thoughts, because I put the video out about the Ignite and Bleed stuff, and I still think that's super interesting. But this is just looking super, super nice to me, especially with the buffs that we've got. And things like Enduring Cry is just like even more powerful than ever. You can do a lot of stuff with max res as well now, so you can kind of play around with that. So I will link my version as well as a link to Pox's site. But I'll link my version of this POB. Or is it? Yeah. Into the chat, and you can have a play around with it and look at it. I think there's some interesting tech here. Just from a defensive point of view, the defensive numbers are looking really, really good. So yeah, like if you are going hardcore, this could be an interesting version, hardcore version of RF. I don't know. You know, I would revert to Pox, and I'd love to have a conversation with him about it at some point. But, you know, he's tried a lot of this stuff, so he'll probably, you know, he might see something that I'm not seeing. But yes, take a look, see what you think, and yeah, I mean, League starts tomorrow, guys. I'm like super, super hyped about it, and I guess, yeah, let me know if this has maybe changed your mind or is something that you're potentially looking at, because the explosions, if you haven't tried it, I'm telling you, the explosions feel amazing, especially on that dense content. All right. Good luck figuring out your league start. Thank you so much for watching. Friends, exiles, I will see you in the next one. Super hyped. Let's go. Ta-da.